The following presentation is a gift from the team at Streamline Publishing, publishers of Fine Art Connoisseur, Plein Air Magazine, and weekly newsletters Fine Art Today, Realism Today, Plein Air Today, and American Watercolor, and events, the Plein Air Convention and the Figurative Art Convention. We offer over 400 different art instruction tutorials and ultra high-quality video by the world's leading artists. If you like what you see, help us support our artists and our team with your purchase. Each video aired has a special discount code for today only in the comments section with a link to the video offered. And to see everything we do, or if you want to receive notice of new releases, new products, and new events for artists, simply click the other link, which says, "See everything we do." Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air Magazine. Thanks for being here today. Every day at 3 o'clock we have a video for you so that you can learn and grow. And today we have a classic with Robert Johnson in the studio with Azaleas and Oranges.
Hello. I'm really happy to have an opportunity to do a demonstration, a lengthy demonstration of what will hopefully be a completed painting that will be put in a gallery or collected if it reaches the finish line, and we're going to do our best to do that. I'm going to try to demonstrate and talk about every step of the process, starting with the raw canvas through to the finished product. The first thing that I'd like to talk about is the actual setup that I'm going to do. It's a setup that involves a lot of different shapes, colors, textures, a lot of variety in it. It has a feeling of kind of freedom in the setup itself. These are azaleas. I've taken the liberty of taking some scissors and thinned out some of the growth just purely for aesthetic purposes, so that we can get some of the light in the background coming through. That's a Japanese print in the background of flowers. The setup itself is going to have an illusion of space leading into this pot of azaleas, and it's going to be looking, my perspective on it is going to be looking down with this space leading into the azaleas and into the background. In setting up a still life, there's certain things to keep in mind. One is the variety of shapes that you want. You wouldn't want all the pots to be this size or this size, or the shapes of the objects that you choose to arrange your still life. The values of the objects and how they're played off one against the other. Here you can see the light on the dark, dark on the light, dark on the light, dark on the light. So you're thinking, even at this stage in setting up the painting, you're thinking in abstract terms about a design of color, shapes, values that will have a resonance, an artistic resonance at the end of the painting. It took me a while to set this up, but the ultimate result should be a very free, natural, spontaneous looking setup. It's what we're after. It took me several hours to arrive at a setup that I felt made me want to paint and got my pulse going. But it should look like it just happened naturally. That's what you're after, the nonchalance, the natural look of a setup rather than a stilted, stiff setup. The shape, the space is broken up by these objects so that it's non-repetitive, and the negative space in between is all should work together. The variety in the painting starts with the setup. Again, different colors, shapes, arrangements, and you'll see as we paint it, we'll treat certain things differently to strive for that variety. My painting surface is double primed portrait weave, primed with lead on it's linen canvas mounted on gator board. Remember that the lead is toxic, but if you respect it and understand that it does have a toxic quality, and wash your hands and don't breathe in sanded fumes and that type of thing, and be sensible about it, it's nothing to be afraid of. My palette, this is plexiglass over raw linen canvas, the same type of portrait weave that I have here, but it's unprimed. It's neither warm nor cool dramatically in either direction, and it's neither light nor dark. And to me, working on stark white palette, the paints get a little bit distorted in their values. So I prefer to work on something a little more muted. The white is a titanium zinc mixture, Naples yellow light, cadmium lemon, cadmium yellow pale, yellow ochre pale, Indian yellow from Winsor Newton, transparent oxide red, Terra Rosa, cadmium red light from Holbein, Old Holland brilliant pink, permanent rose, permanent alizarin from Gamblin, cobalt violet, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, viridian from Holbein, cinnabar green from Holbein. This is a pile of paint that it's kind of my green of preference. It's a mixture of the cadmium yellow pale and the ultramarine blue with something from the red family up here. My medium today, I've used a lot of different mediums, but today I'm going to be using a mixture of distilled turpentine, sun-thickened or thickened linseed oil, and with just a hint of Damar varnish in it. I don't want to overdo the Damar varnish because it does, if you overuse it, it has a tendency to yellow. A word on the medium. I wouldn't overuse any medium. I'll use it on certain stages of the painting, and I'll use it at times if I want to loosen up some of the pigments that may get a little bit stiff during the course of the demonstration. But overall, I think a good rule would be to use as little medium as possible. Use it for the fluidity to kind of get starting if you want to make long strokes. To start a painting, I don't like to paint on white canvas. I like to get an idea of what the paint's going to look like with a wash on it, with some type of color that's going to be in the painting. Hopefully it'll be noticeable at the end, but maybe not. But at any rate, while I'm working on it, I won't be putting paint on stark white canvas, which has a tendency to, in my view, to distort the values that you see up there. Makes them look darker than they really are. So let me get started with a wash. Now I'm going to, the fancy word for it is an imprimatura, but it's just a wash of certain pigments with mineral spirits in them just to kill the white of the canvas and get into the painterly world of painting, and to, sometimes if you're successful doing a painting, you can leave some of this wash and it will form a part of the painting. So, and the other thing I'd like to start right at the start and start working in an artistic manner. So when we put, we're going to put over certain areas, start designing the painting right now by thinking about what's ultimately going to be placed in the various areas of the painting. Okay, so I'm going to take some pigment and dilute it, and turpentine, and just start laying in the various areas of the painting. Thin coat, and what will happen after I get this in, it's a little bit that wonderful transparent oxide red in there. Thin, and while the painting progresses, as time lapses, you'll see that this will start setting up, and it won't be very long before we'll be able to work right over it. Now that the bottom, this part of the painting here at the bottom, it's got a lot going on in terms of color and shapes, but the predominant element there is that Oriental rug. And I'm going to try to introduce some pigment down there that's Terra Rosa. Maybe a little bit of cadmium in there. Thin coats. I would say that one important element of this process is once you pick up a brush and once you start painting, you do everything related to this process like an artist. You know, it's not just painted on like the flat wall or this. It's getting you into that wonderful realm of art. And it starts even at this kind of, it looks messy and haphazard. But number one, it gets you thinking like an artist. And number two, if things work, we might be able to use some of that Terra Rosa with the cadmium in it at the end to create some of that variety and in color and value and brush strokes that I think that I strive for in my painting. There's a big mass of dark there, and just to kind of get a feel for that, I'm going to put a little transparent oxide red and a little bit of that viridian. Now, keep in mind, working with oil paints, it's a very forgiving medium. I mean, everything that we are doing, if we don't like it, we can change. So if I lay down a big mass of dark here and it turns out to be too dark, we can take it out. And I would say that when you understand that oil paint is forgiving and you can make changes with whatever you do, it's a very liberating thought and feeling. Then you can take chances, do things you wouldn't normally do. Because you know anything you do, you can always bring it back or go back to where you were or take it forward to another design or color or whatever. Try to be free with your paints. That means when I squint, and I encourage you to squint a lot, I see a big dark mass, I see this red, and I see the light Japanese screen back there. So this is just the wash to kind of start us along that path. We know that's going to go off, so let's see what it's going to look like. You know, the big abstract shapes. Let me just show you what I mean. Let's just say, for instance, just for demonstration purposes, you say, oops, I went too far. I don't want that over there. Voila, then you don't hesitate to take chances and make big strokes. Put down bold colored, if you know you can go back. That's the start. That's just a wash. The fancy artsy word is imprimatura, but it's basically just a wash to get you started, to know that you're working into a color. The canvas has a vitality to it. You're in an artistic world. Now I'm going to clean the palette. Now the next step is to take a deep breath and look at the setup. Take an opportunity to squint. Try to identify the values, the relative lightness and darkness of everything up there, and the patterns of the light and the dark. And then, again, and this is done also with a great deal of freedom to make changes. This is where you're deciding shapes, the big shapes, the big size. I mean, how big is that pot? You could make a big pot, and then the azaleas would be very small coming off the top. Well, when you're designing at this stage of your painting, that's what kind of thinking you have. I mean, how big should these objects be so that I can make everything else the right size and have them work on the canvas or off the canvas how I want them to be, and have them placed so that they all work artistically. How big is that? The bread pot, the Home Depot pot. And you're always thinking about how one object is going to relate to another in terms of size and value. Push this over too far, then the little green ginger jar is going to have to go off the edge, and I don't think that's going to be a good artistic choice. So let's try it right there. It's the biggest container we have to deal with, even though it kind of disappears into the green when you squint, but it's still a big object, and everything out here is going to have to be related to that. So. This stage of a painting, the layout design stage, is you should be absolutely free. You should work with very long, loose strokes, because I'll just show you. Say on the azaleas, if you're designed for the pattern of the azaleas or something like that, if you actually, at this stage of your painting, make strokes that are that long, it helps you tactily with your brush relate this mass up here with this mass. There's something about having the brush touch both places and relating them on the canvas. And when you're doing figure work and portraits, that's so important to relate, the head to the feet, and you can do that with these long brush strokes that don't have to be there at the end, but at the beginning are very important to help you. Try to relate how everything is going to be placed. People, let me say one other thing that we're going to strive for. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't, but a painting, in my opinion, my observation of paintings, never rises above the weakest thing in it. And if frequently the thing that is the weakest or is either clumsy or inattentive, ineffective draftsmanship. What triggered the thought is that these are all ellipses, and we have to make an attempt to capture them accurately. I'm not advocating drawing everything that's within your field of vision with a great deal of detail. What the process involves is selecting the things that are important to make a good painting, and then painting those just as well as you can. there's so many approaches to painting. So many ways to start, so many ideas, so many end results that, from abstract all the way to super realism. It seems like to me that as I've gone around and taught and seen other artists progress, it's very important to analyze your own ideas about beauty. What do you think is beautiful in a painting? If you like John Singer Sargent and want to paint like him, it's kind of wasting time to paint like Matisse. Unless you really love Matisse, then try to paint like that. But they're different worlds. And there's so much to learn that, if you really want to paint like Sargent, the time is better spent studying the people that he studied, studying his paintings, and studying people who admire him and paint like him. And there's plenty of room for everybody at the table. It's just very, very different kind of seating arrangement. To get a good idea, really, about where the lights are going to be, you really, at least I have to start lifting off some of the pigment. Because, why is that? It's because values are so important. They're really the most, the light, the play of the light and the dark and how you handle it are really the big compositional elements. The things that give power to your painting, the lights and the dark shapes. One thing when I was trying to figure out how these people that I admired got to be so good, one thing I found is the common element of all the ones that I admired is they all could draw. They were very, very good draftsmen. And I think it's one of the keys to this business. Learning to draw teaches one how to see relationships. How do you break up space? You don't want just a big, you want the space to be broken up, but you want it to be broken up so it means something. So all this debris, this little photograph, hopefully there'll be interesting artistic elements, but they'll also give me an opportunity to make this space here, which is a third of the canvas, an interesting element. I'm going to try to establish, where the lights are going to be. Now, we're working here with several light sources. At my studio, I like to work with single source north light, daylight. If you can get that, that's something to be strived for. But we're doing a video here. We have, if you see the setup, there's several different spots of light on all of the objects, not just one highlight, which would be the case with single source light. If you see, even on the orange here, because we have competing light sources, there's several different highlights, but there's one, when you squint down, that predominates. That's the one you want to capture. Let me see if I can establish where some of these very light azaleas are going to be in the end. Now, we don't want this to be just a big massive snow cone azaleas. They've got to have a rhythm, a flow to them, empty spaces between them. I took some scissors and kind of cut out some so that we'd have a rhythm to them. People that write about art and don't understand that what we're talking about is abstract concepts, light and dark, shapes, underlying all the things that we do in this type of painting is an abstract design, and the good paintings are thought of in abstract shapes, forms, colors, and that ultimately become objects. So to get some feel going on the final painting, that is the value separation between the azaleas and the stems and the leaves of the azaleas. I'm going to use a big brush just to see if I can get it moving in a broad manner with the transparent oxide red, and the Viridian is a thicker version of that wash. The idea being that I'm going to establish some of the darkest darks in the painting, which to me appear to be those dark leaves and areas in between the leaves. And then I'm going to jump in with some of the lights. This Viridian is the only Viridian I've found that I really enjoy working with. It's Holbein. Beautiful green. If it's too dark, you can lighten it up. But I guess the general idea in this whole business is that try to be as bold as you can make yourself be. That is, if you're going to put a dark on, make it as dark as you know, maybe a little darker. If you're going to make a long brush stroke, make it a little longer. If you're going to put on a red, make it a little redder. A lighter, and you can always back up. We want to kind of select some of these azaleas that are going to be resolved more than others, and get them placed. Looks like an azalea already. This, if you work big, instead of drawing out everything, you get an idea of the finished painting pretty quickly. I think I'm going to try to rub out a little of that red in that I'm just lifting up just a little pigment so that it's not so red in there. A little too blue. Another very dark element in this arrangement here is this, the big red pot with the azalea. I just want to get an idea for that value. Permanent alizarin, gambling. Transparent oxide red. Workhorse pigment. I don't have any black on my palette because I found that I can get to the value of black using some variation of what I have here. Usually it has the transparent oxide red or the ultramarine blue or the permanent alizarin in it, and get down to, ivory black value, but it's a more interesting color. Pretty soft brush. It's called a Master's Liku. I know that that highlight on the red pot is a big element. Well, it's a significant landmark. So when I'm setting up the setup, you don't want to have something obscuring that, because it's something that it tells so much about several things. It tells the direction the light's coming from. It tells the contours of the surface that it's passing over. Is it faceted like the ginger jar on the left, or is it rounded like this? And it also tells you the tactile quality of the surface itself. Is it a peach or is it a ceramic vessel? So generally, when you can get that much pictorial mileage out of a highlight, you want to, don't hide it. Make sure that when you set up your still life, that it's visible. When light hits a surface, it kind of flows across it like water, one thing, this, we've kind of subtly moved into the next stage of the painting process. This stage is very different from the beginning stage, where everything is loose and open and in your mind changeable. You're putting it down to get a feel for relationships and placement, and with the idea that things can be changed. This stage is a different stage in that at this point, with the design in place, you're working with the idea that every brushstroke is done for an artistic purpose and is put down as if it's never going to be changed. No doubt there are going to be many that will be changed, but they're not put down with that attitude. And if the perfect painting, none will be changed. So they're put down with the idea that they're describing something. They're the very best that you can do at that point to capture what you're trying to capture. They're not put down with the idea that I'm going to come back later and really make it good. They're all put down with the idea that this is it. This is the best I can do at this point in my understanding and knowledge of painting and my control of my materials. While I'm here on this azalea, this is the best I can do to describe that. By concentrating and making your brushstrokes descriptive and deliberate, it gives that variety that you're after. I like the brush. It's has your brushes. Let me comment while I'm painting, because this brush is responding very well. When you're selecting your brushes, what you should look for to do this kind of painting, they should come to a sharp edge, which this one is doing. They should have spring to it, so you can, when you pick up paint, you can pick up a generous quantity of paint and put it on. Spring. They should be durable. You know, the hair shouldn't start coming out and ruining your painting, and they should last. They don't have to be the most expensive brushes. Sometimes they are, but it doesn't matter. If you get the brush that's right for you and doing the things you want to do, then I think the money should not be an object. Again, it doesn't have to mean you have to pay the most for a brush, but what I'm at this stage, you know, the thing that I think we've got that's pretty good, and hope we can build on it, is the value relationships between the light and the dark.
Well, that's Robert Johnson in the studio, Azaleas and Oranges. It's a classic and it's great information. You can learn more about that video at streamline.art. Also, we have a special discount code for you today only, and you can find that in the comments section. Thanks for watching. By the way, I should tell you we have a free gift for you. It's called 97 Amazing Painting Secrets, and you can find it at 97tips.com. Bye.